This is another episode of Dangerous Ideas. My name is Shawn. I'm an innovation strategist. What we do is we break down concepts and frameworks that will change your life. Oh, wow. Hey, everyone. My name is Shawn, and this is another episode of Dangerous Ideas. In this podcast, what we do is we break down concepts and frameworks that will change your life. And by the way, as an introduction, because I know we've had a lot of new folks coming into this podcast, hello. My name is Shawn Kanungo. I spent my entire career in this space called innovation, helping incumbent organizations and leaders find value in new ways. And this is what I've dedicated my life to. And this podcast is not only for helping organizations and businesses, but most importantly, helping you as a professional in your life, in your career, and wherever else. And normally what we do in this podcast is that, we'll have some guests, but we also have some solo podcasts. And I actually bring dangerous ideas from other people throughout this podcast. And this is another solo episode because I think people have been enjoying the solo episodes, bringing insights from other places. And I'm super excited about this one because it touches on my favorite subject, which is how you can be in the 1% and how you can surpass the 99%. That is what this podcast is all about. And I think the other part of the podcast is the other piece that I'm bringing in is all of this is advice that I would give to my 20-year-old self. And I've actually picked some really influential individuals talking about what advice they would give to 20-year-olds. And so I think this will be valuable for you. So, depending on where the podcast producer goes, this is either going to be like how to escape the 99% or the best advice that you can give your 20-year-old self. So, we're going to figure out which one that's going to be. So the first dangerous idea is this idea of be the only one. Be the only one. There's a great podcast clip from this podcast called Not Investment Advice, probably in my top 3 podcasts with Bilal Zaidi, Jack Butcher, and Trung Phan. And in this podcast episodes, they're actually doing a reaction video to their most viral interview that they had with Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor is probably the Bitcoin god. Like, he is probably the number one voice in Bitcoin other than Adam O'Brien, who's been on this pod a ton. He's got a company called MicroStrategy. And in this podcast, they are reacting to their interview with Michael Saylor, dropping the most epic piece of advice that he would give to his 20-year-old self and to other 20-year-olds today. And so this is like a reaction video to a reaction video. And I hope that somebody takes this reaction video and reacts to it. So let's drop the clip and see what Michael Saylor says.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about.
Gets, most of the market. The number 2 gets a little bit. The number 3 gets noticed. And the numbers 4 through 40,000 are the long tail of mediocrity. So figure that out, make your career there. And then if you come back to the metaphor of laser eyes, the whole point of laser eyes is, yes, you have 100 opinions, but the world only cares about one. Yes, you can do 100 things, but the world only wants to pay you to do one thing. Right? And once you do that one thing, if you have a modicum of success and you start thinking that you can do a second, a third, and a fourth thing, you're wrong.
You're wrong.
Right? Because when you're the most successful person in your niche and you're doing the one thing, there's someone that's smarter than you, more talented than you, that has more to gain, less to lose, that wants to replace you. And they're thinking about that 80 hours a week.
Yep.
And you're
That's
deciding
so
to
right,
put your
man.
thing on
That's
autopilot and
so
move
good.
on to conquer some new thing because, that's what, alpha males do. When you think about
such great piece of advice, and it's the idea of be the only one. And in fact, the world is not paying you to do something in second place or third place or fourth place. Your default should be like, how do I be number one in this particular position? Now, in many industries or professions, maybe this doesn't apply to you. Maybe you might be in something where you don't have to be the only one. But in business, in sports, in most of life, it's about finding something that you are the only one at. The finding something that you have a complete mastery in. And what's interesting is that I've been thinking about this a lot when it comes to other fields like the NBA. There was a really great interview, and I'm forgetting the gentleman's name. It may have been Spencer Dinwiddie, talking about like who we remember as NBA players. And the reality is that he's like, even if you are like a top 20 all NBA player of all time, we're only really going to remember in 100 years, like the top three. We're going to remember LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell. Like, we're only going to remember the supreme performers, and everyone else will be forgotten. And this applies so much to life as well. Like, you should strive to be the only one. And in fact, I think the biggest mistake that we have is that we think that once we are successful at this one thing, that we're going to go off and do like 2, 3, 4 other things. When in reality, there's like a whole boatload of people that are gunning to get the number one spot in every single domain. So like the world will only pay you and cares about you if you do that one thing really well. So I guess the best advice that Michael Saylor gives is find the thing that you are extraordinarily good at. And I think there's a number of ways of doing this. Number one, it's like find an apprentice, find someone that is already doing the thing that you want to be good at, and study them or go under them to find your own sort of unique skill within their sort of apprenticeship. Number two is to practice deliberately. It's like continuously pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone in your particular path. Number two, it's constantly seeking, new learnings, new ways of doing things around that particular lane. And number three, I think beyond like mastery in your particular skill, beyond mastery around your particular product or whatever you're building, it's being indispensable. In my book, I call this idea of literally the title of the book is like The Bold Ones, How to Innovate and Disrupt and Be Truly Indispensable. And the reason why I included the idea of being truly indispensable is it's not only about acquiring a masterful skill, but it's the ability to ship it out in the world and for people to know what that skill is. So whether it's creating unique IP or creating your own, creating something so unique that you can ship out in the world so other people know what your skill is at the end of the day. And that is what indispensable means. It's something that goes beyond just your skill. It's something that everyone knows and everyone attaches their, whether it's like affinity to or trust, you gain trust. It could be, as a simple example, let's say you are a world-class at research. Well, why don't you combine all that research together in a PowerPoint deck or in video presentations so that people can attach your skill in terms of research with a particular asset that you can ship, all around the world. I use that example because that is an example that I use in my book, The Bold Ones, around Mary Meeker. She was incredible. She was an incredible research analyst, and her ability to put these intense PowerPoint decks together about all her research about the internet. She was able to ship that around the world. That was her unique IP. That was taking her personality, her brand, everything that she did in terms of her research into a particular deck, and she was able to ship that out, and that's how she became indispensable. So going back to Michael Saylor, it's like, be the only one. Build a skill set so that you are extraordinarily different from somebody else. And the world will only pay you if you are the only one. That's where you're going to get you know, an incredible advantage. And if I just think about this in my own life, like what am I doing to do this? I think the one thing I guess that I've become the only one is I guess in my world, when it comes to speaking, I guess I am the only person on the planet that is able to take a presentation and being able to quickly put up sort of content and being able to riff on hot takes. And my combination between video and storytelling and creativity and putting that all together and doing that quickly is something that I'm actually in sort of a unique bucket in. Now, maybe there's other people that will come up and do that as well. But right now, that's my only competitive advantage, other than the fact that I look really great in glasses if you're watching this on video. So I guess that's my unique advantage right now. And I think the idea is to lean into that. Maybe it's not something that everyone is doing, but at least it's something that I can lean in and I can create a lead in by being great at that one thing. So I'm also good at other things, but that's probably something that I'm doing differently than other people. So really great insight from Michael Saylor, a reaction to a reaction video. Hey, you ain't getting these types of insights anywhere else. All right, second clip. And at first glance, it seems like it's completely opposite of what Michael Saylor is saying around being the only one. But in this clip, the dangerous idea here is that we are all equal. We are all equal. And the reason why it seems like it's, and the reason why I paired them back to back is that Michael Saylor is saying is be the only one. And in this dangerous idea, I'm saying we are equal. This is from a clip from Lex Friedman's podcast. This is like 2 hours and 49 minutes in, where he talks to Chamath Palihapitiya, who's been on this podcast, referenced before in this podcast. And Lex asks Chamath a question, which is, what advice would you give to your 20-year-old self? And Chamath comes up with this idea of that we are equal. And I'll tell you why after this clip, why actually those two ideas are actually the same. Drop the clip.
It is really important that if somebody that you respect, and I'm going to, just for the purpose of this, put myself in that bucket. And if you're listening to this, I wish somebody had told this to me. We are all equal. And you will fight this demon inside you that says you are less than a lot of other people for reasons that will be hard to see until you're much, much older. And so you have to find either a set of people far, far away, like what I did, or one or two people really, really close to you, or maybe it's both, that will remind you in key moments of your life that that is true. Otherwise, you will give in to that beast. And it's not the end of the world, and you'll recover from it. I've made a lot of mistakes, but it requires a lot of energy. And sometimes it's just easier to just stop and give up. So I think that if you're starting out in the world, if you've been lucky to have a wonderful life and you had wonderful parents, man, you should go and give them a huge hug, because they did you such a service that most folks don't do to most kids, unfortunately. And it's not the fault of these parents, but it's just tough. Life is tough. So give them a kiss, and then figure out a way where you can just do work that validates you and where you feel like you're developing some kind of mastery. Who cares what anybody else thinks about it? Just do it because it feels good. Do it because you like to get good at something. But if you're not one of those lucky people, you can believe in your friends, or you can just believe in me. I'm telling you, preserve optionality. How you do that is by regulating your reactions to things. And your reactions are going to be largely guided in moments where you think that you are not the same as everybody else, and specifically that you are less than those people, and you're not. So just save this part of this podcast and just play it on a loop if you need to.
Well, listen, Chamath, we just played this on a loop. So I love this idea that we are equal. And the reason why it's not different from what Michael Saylor says, which is this idea of, be the only one. And actually, Chamath actually lays it out. It's this idea of, we're all equal at the beginning. And there is actually nothing different between you and I. I mean, there might be physical differences, and I think sports is a different category because there are people that are gifted in some sort of realm. Like, listen, if I was 6'8" and 275 pounds and had like this giant wingspan, of course, then maybe I would be on the same breath as other NBA players. But taking sports aside, it's the idea that we are all equal. It's the idea that we all are born with the same level of opportunity and intellect and drive and ambition. Like at the end of the day, we start all as equals. But there are some people that actually develop a sense of mastery, and that's where Michael Saylor's piece comes in. It's that some people decide to say, we're all equal, but I'm going to develop this skill and become the only one. And I think, one of the best stories, and I mentioned this before in a podcast because it is something that I think about all the time, which is my brother-in-law. He very successful person. He went to like this entrepreneur like group or something like that, and like really successful people. And what was interesting is that he went to this thing and he was feeling a little nervous because his business may not be at the same caliber as these incredible people. And in that room, everybody had like, I asked my brother-in-law, what was the one insight that you got going to this group of incredible entrepreneurs? And he said that everyone actually had the same problem, that everyone had no idea what they were doing. And, sometimes we look at other people and they say that they have something that I don't, when it's actually not true. Actually, we're all kind of floating in life trying to figure it out. And the people that do master a particular skill, it's because they are, they try to differentiate themselves by all the things that I talked about. They practice, they learn, they have they take an apprenticeship, they continuously work on themselves around this particular skill, and that's how they differentiate themselves. But don't get it twisted. We all are equal at the beginning. And, you have to remind us, I think about this all the time too. Like I'll be in the airport and I'll see 1,000 people in the airport, and everyone is smart, they're talented, they're brilliant, they have their own opinions. Like what differentiates me from all these people that I see? And there actually is not much. It's just the people that find mastery in a particular skill. And so don't ever feel that you are less than someone else at the beginning. There are people that do, they do master a particular skill and they do get ahead in that sort of way. But it's not like you are born with lesser, or you're born with something that somebody else doesn't have. Like we all sort of have the same, we all start the same way. And listen, some people are born into more privilege than others. Some people are like, I'm incredibly privileged that I was born here in Canada and, grew up with a really great family with a great support system around me. And not everyone has that. But from an intellect perspective, generally from a ambition, like we all start at the same level. So don't assume that other people are way ahead of you than they are. So love that clip from Chamath. It's a great reminder that we are equal, and actually that you should treat everyone equally too, no matter who they are in life. Is that you should treat everyone equally because you are no better than anybody else. And I think that's an important thing to remind yourself of. Okay, number 3. I love this. This might be one of my favorite dangerous ideas, which is assume you are not Kanye. Assume you are not Kanye. Now, I didn't say this. This clip is from a podcast called Uncensored CMO they had Scott Galloway on. Scott Galloway is a NYU professor of marketing. He, over last, I'd say 5 to 10 years, his brand has really grown. He's unapologetic. He's very outspoken. He's got a great podcast with Kara Swisher called Pivot. And he's been an incredible thought leader in management thinker over the last number of years, since he's really risen his popularity and his profile. What's funny is that Chamath and his crew hate Prof G, because Prof G hates Tesla and Elon, and they all have beef, which is really kind of funny. But I think the one downside to Prof G, I think, is that maybe his bets around his stock price, his stock bets have not been really great. Anyways, beyond that, he actually gives some really incredible advice, and he's somebody that I respect a ton as well. And in this clip, he talks about this idea that assume you are not Kanye, and if you are not Kanye, you should be focusing on this, which is, in my mind, what I got from this clip is focusing on your social capital and focusing on actually being kind. So let's drop the clip and see what Scott Galloway has to say.
And this is in the book. The difference between being economically secure and the people who are really wealthy is there's a myth. And the myth is kind of the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren trope that rich people, billionaires, crawled over other people to get wealthy. And what I found in the research is that actually wealthy people are, generally speaking, really good people. Because what you want is you want to be put in a room of opportunities without being in that room. And in order to be really wealthy, you have to collect allies along the way. You have to have people that think of you with opportunities, give you the benefit of the doubt. You also, wealth is a kind of what I call a full person project. And that is the fastest way to steal or to grasp or snatch financial insecurity from financial security is personal failings, a lack of character, divorce, which I've been through. I lost 60% of my net worth overnight. You split your assets and then you lose another 10% because you're supporting 2 households and you become a forced seller of assets, which is never a good idea. And also, show me a small or a medium-sized company that's doing really well and that all of a sudden kind of folds. I'll show you people at the top who are professionally divorcing. They're not getting along. So unless you're willing to bring generosity, forgiveness, empathy to your personal and your professional relationships, I don't think you're ever going to be that wealthy. I mean, some people are so fucking talented. Kanye can do whatever he wants. He's going to be fine. Assume you are not Kanye. Right? You want to bring, generally speaking, the millionaire next door is someone who values his personal relationships or her personal relationships, is a good person, and people want this person to win.
Love this. Assume you are not Kanye. Basically, it means that assume you're not a super genius. Assume you are not like the most talented person on the planet. And so if you can't be the only one, if you can't be a Kanye, if you can't develop this incredible skill, then the other way of getting wealthy as a young person is to build your social capital. Number one, it's being developing an access to resources, being friendly, being kind, create value. The greatest way of getting value for yourself is actually creating value for other people without asking for anything in return. It's funny, like I remember when I was like running recruiting at Deloitte, one of the things that people would like the default way of getting a job is that you would like throw out a cover letter and resume, when really most people, what they do to get a job is that they actually create value to start. They're like, what problems are you trying to solve? And they'll like put together something. Like the most compelling people that I saw, actually, they actually did the work. They went above and beyond, and they actually did something beyond like a cover letter and a resume in order to show you that they cared, or they met with you. They learned your problems. They put something together to create value for you without asking for anything in return. And I think in order to access really important people to build your social capital, you have to create value for them without asking for anything in return. And then in return, you might get some value back. So it's like good karma at the end of the day. Number two, I think, is in order to get into some of those rooms is to understand how to create influence and power. And I talk about this a lot, is that today in this age, one of the ways of creating power is through content. It's through building your own brand at the end of the day. It's building your own brand equity. Now, that doesn't have to be through just digital content and putting stuff on social media, but it could be like creating an event, right? Or creating a WhatsApp group, creating a text group with like really important people, connecting people together. That's another way of creating value. And that's how you create your influence and power. Number 3 is like, to that point, to create strategic alliances with others. It could be coworkers, it could be colleagues, it could be coming together and building something together. That's another way of building social capital. Number 4 is, I think, around reputation management. I think there's so many young people, they forget that reputation is a long-term game, and you can lose your reputation in a couple seconds, whether you're doing something stupid when you're out in the town, or you're posting something dumb on social media, or you burn a relationship with somebody else because of a bad deal. Like, reputation is a long-term game, and you can lose it so quickly. And so keep your chin up, okay? I see so many people throwing away incredible reputation that they've built over years, but you can lose it in a second. And number 5, I think the most important piece, and the one real key takeaway out of this is, like, be kind. If you are a good person, if you maintain really great relationships with the people around you and the people that work with you, you're going to be able to you're going to be able to build a great career just by being kind, showing up, and he says, like, most businesses, the reason why they fail is because the founders don't get along. The reason why most divorces happen is because, listen, somebody is an asshole at the end of the day, and that's why people get divorced. So be kind, be a good person, and you're going to be able to create wealth by doing that, according to Professor Scott Galloway. So, love that. Assume you are not Kanye. And the last dangerous idea is probably the most important idea that I've referenced on this pod. I want to say like 5 times already, and I keep reinforcing this because it is probably the reason why this podcast exists. It's the reason why I wrote the book, The Bold Ones. It's the idea that competition is for losers. I've mentioned this like 8 million times, but this is the first time I'm actually bringing where that it's coming from, which is it's actually an excerpt from the Wall Street Journal that's paraphrasing what they think a chapter in Peter Thiel's book, 0 to 1, is all about. People always ask me, what is the number 1 book that you would recommend? And I always go back to Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. And to me, 0 to 1, the whole idea of 0 to 1 is actually the idea that competition is for losers. And so in this clip, Peter Thiel describes why this idea of competition is for losers is so compelling, and why you should create a monopoly. Drop the clip.
The chapter in my book entitled All Happy Companies Are Different got excerpted by the Wall Street Journal, and they retitled it a little bit more provocatively with the title Competition is for Losers. And the reason this is such a provocative title is because we always think that the losers are the people who can't compete effectively enough. The losers are the people who are slow on the swim team in high school. The losers are the people whose grades or test scores aren't quite good enough to get into the right universities or something like that. And so the idea that somehow competition itself is something that we are perversely attracted to is very counterintuitive. And yet I want to suggest that there is always this incredible pull that competition has on us.
Competition is for losers. And if we put all these ideas together, be the only one, we are all equal, assume you're not Kanye. Competition is for losers. The punchline is that in order to create a competitive advantage, you have to be unique. You have to be what Seth Godin calls the purple cow. You have to be different. You not only have to build a mastery around a particular skill, but you have to be you have to achieve some sort of a monopoly. You have to achieve some sort of escape velocity from your competition. In this talk by Peter Thiel that was posted 9 years ago, listen, I'm doing the work, by the way, that so you don't have to. What he's reinforcing is that actually happy companies are the ones that create this competitive advantage, and unhappy companies are the ones that are in this dogfight. And it makes sense, right? When you are in a hyper competitive market, you're constantly looking over and seeing, who's going to take your lunch. But when you're in a monopoly, you're way more happy. You're not looking over every single second, but you're able to focus on yourself, right? And so competition is for losers, I think is a powerful analogy. And it's this idea that how can you create something that's new? Or how can you be somebody that is fundamentally different from others? That's what innovation is all about, creating value in new ways. You can do that by building something that's technological, that is 10x better than somebody else. You can do that by creating some sort of network effect where, because there's so many people that are using your product or service, that you create this moat through this network effect. Or that could be through economies of scale, or you have an incredible brand. You create a differentiate. You become completely differentiated because you have a unique brand position. These are all these different ways of separating yourself from the competition. And you can take this as an organization or as an individual. So try to create your own monopoly. Competition is for losers. And like I said, again, this is the best book that you will read, not only if you're in business, not only if you're in startups, but just in terms of your career. So I guess if we would whittle down the advice from all these really incredible individuals, it's the idea that you just got to be unique. That's it. And especially today, in a world that is increasingly more competitive, in a world that is increasingly noisier, you have to find your point of differentiation. Not to bring every podcast back to artificial intelligence, but I think I do in every single podcast. I just had a conversation with a leader when it comes to AI. And the conversation was around this idea of their talent and what type of new model should they be looking at when it comes to talent. And my response is that we are starting to reimagine how we look at how we hire and organize our talent within our organization. I think COVID did an incredible thing, because what it showed us is that now you can get workers anywhere around the world to do something for you at actually a radically cheaper cost. Now, we all knew this. I've been a proponent of crowdsourcing or using freelancers throughout my entire life. Like, I have almost, upwards of six figures in Upwork costs and fees that they've paid to that company, because using designers, developers, researchers, writers, coders, throughout my entire, over a decade plus. And my observation by leveraging freelancers around the world is that now that AI has become so ubiquitous, the idea of leveraging remote workers with AI is super powerful, because the reason why most organizations did not use remote workers or freelancers is because they didn't have the talent, that outside talent could not be able to do the work that we do here in North America, for example. But the reality is that because of technology, because of AI, the world has all leveled up. And what is the difference when you're talking to a worker that is in your particular city on Zoom versus somebody that is in Bangladesh? What's the difference? Knowledge? Well, knowledge is becoming increasingly more commoditized. Is it technology? Everyone has access to the same technology. Maybe it's cultural nuances. I get that. But for the most part, what is the difference? And so what you're going to be seeing is that now that the barriers to entry within a particular industry have dropped because everyone has the same tools and technologies and knowledge, the world is going to get way more competitive. Let me repeat, the world is going to get more competitive. If you are sitting in North America and you are a 20-year-old, just came out of a 4-year degree in accounting or marketing or finance or psychology, whatever it might be, guess what? You are not now competing on a global scale. You not only compete with the people that are in your university, you're competing against the people that are in Thailand, in Bangladesh, in Sweden, in Finland, who all have equal or more education. And by the way, they got AI too. And so the world is leveling up. And as the world levels up, we need to figure out what is our point of differentiation? How do we be the only? How do we how do we escape competition at the end of the day? That's what you have to find for yourself. Find a skill that you can master at. Find the skill that you can be the only one at. Find the skill that you're not the 4th place or 5th place at. Find the thing that you are the first place at. Because the world is getting increasingly more competitive. And I know this might scare you. I'm not here to scare you. But I think that the genie's out of the bottle. You can't be mediocre anymore. This is the end of mediocrity. You can't just go to school and find something and just like coast. You can't. You got to find something that you are incredible at. You got to find something that you build a monopoly in because the world has leveled up. This is the end of mediocrity. I'm going to leave it there. If you've gotten this far on this podcast, rate, review, subscribe. Last episode on the Jerry Seinfeld episode, I asked you to send me a note if you enjoyed the podcast. And I thank everyone that sent me a text or a DM to say that they loved it. Thank you so much. Escape the competition. Be unique. See you on the next one.